Welcome back to Unlock, Empower, Transform. I'm Shay Blackmon, founder and CEO of Shay Blackmon Consulting, DBA candidate in organizational leadership, and someone who has spent over 2 decades in the trenches of HR across manufacturing, automotive, healthcare, nonprofit, quick service, and professional services. I've seen it all. And today we're going to talk about why so much of what I've seen needs to change. Episode 68, and the topic is one that I will not sugarcoat. From compliance to competitive advantage, rethinking HR's role. Because here's the thing, if your HR department's biggest claim to fame is making sure the employee handbook is up to date, you have a problem. A very expensive, quietly destructive problem. And most organizations do not even realize it until their best people are walking out the door. So whether you're a CEO wondering why you keep hemorrhaging talent, a people leader trying to prove your value beyond open enrollment season, or a professional woman navigating a workplace that feels stuck in 1997, this episode is for you. Let's get into it. Let me paint a picture. Think about the last time someone in your organization mentioned HR. Was the reaction enthusiasm, strategic excitement, or was it an eye roll followed by something like, "Oh great, what policy did we violate now?" That reaction right there is the problem. And it is not just a perception issue. It is a positioning issue. HR has been boxed into the compliance corner for decades, and too many organizations have been perfectly comfortable leaving it there. Process the paperwork, manage the investigations, make sure we do not get sued. That's it. That's the job description, apparently. But here is what nobody is saying out loud. Compliance is the floor. It is the bare minimum. You do not win a championship by simply avoiding fouls. You win by having a strategy, executing plays, and building a team that trusts each other at the most critical moments. Sound familiar? If you have read my book, High Value Leadership, Transforming Organizations Through Purposeful Culture, you know I talk extensively about this exact distinction. When I've walked into organizations throughout my career, whether it was an automotive plant floor, a healthcare operation, or a nonprofit stretched thin on resources, the pattern has been remarkably consistent. HR is brought in after the damage is done, after the turnover spike, after the harassment claim, after the culture is so fractured that people are quiet quitting before quiet quitting even had a name. That is reactive HR. And reactive HR is expensive. Not just in dollars, though we will talk about that on Thursday when I cover the retention ROI, calculating the true cost of turnover. Reactive HR is expensive in trust, in morale, in innovation, and in the discretionary effort your employees stop giving when they feel like nobody is listening. So what does strategic HR actually look like? Because it is easy to throw that phrase around. HR needs a seat at the table. Everyone says it. Fewer people define what HR is supposed to do once it sits down. Strategic HR means your people function is directly tied to business outcomes, period. It means HR is not waiting for a turnover report to identify flight risks. Strategic HR is using data and relationships to predict them. It means HR is not administering engagement surveys and filing the results in a drawer. Strategic HR is translating those results into actionable culture shifts that impact the bottom line. In High Value Leadership, I outline 5 pillars that anchor this approach: purpose-driven vision, stewardship of culture, emotional intelligence, balanced responsibility, and authentic connection. These are not soft skills buzzwords that look nice on a poster in the break room. These are measurable, executable leadership competencies that directly influence whether your organization retains its best people or funds your competitor's talent pipeline. I have seen organizations where the HR leader did not know the company's revenue targets, could not tell you the gross margin, had no insight into the product roadmap, and then leadership wonders why HR cannot contribute strategically. You cannot be a strategic partner if you are not invited into the strategy. and you will not be invited if you cannot speak the language of the business. This is why high-value leadership matters. It bridges the gap between people expertise and business acumen. When HR understands the financial and operational landscape, then conversations change. You stop saying, "We should do a training," and you start saying, "Our second shift turnover rate is costing us $1.2 million annually, and here is a retention strategy with a projected 8-month payback period." That is a different conversation. That is a strategic partner. Now, let me address the elephant in every boardroom: culture. Some leaders still treat culture like it is a nice to have, a perk, something you work on when the real business priorities are handled. And every time I hear that, I think, well, that explains your Glassdoor reviews. Culture is not the wallpaper. Culture is the foundation. In Mastering a High-Value Company Culture, I wrote that culture is the lifeblood of any organization. I stand by that today, probably even more firmly, because I have watched what happens when organizations treat culture as optional. They survive for a while on inertia and market conditions. Then the market shifts, talent tightens, and suddenly that culture they never invested in becomes the very thing accelerating their decline. Let me tell you about a pattern I have observed across multiple industries. There was a company, a mid-size operation, growing fast, acquiring new business. Everything looked great on paper. But internally, their voluntary turnover in the first year of employment was over 40%. They were spending more on recruitment than on development. The frontline employees felt invisible, and middle management was burned out from constantly backfilling roles. Nobody in the C-suite wanted to call it a culture problem because that would mean admitting the strategy was incomplete. When the people function was finally repositioned, not just relocated on the org chart, but genuinely empowered to lead culture strategy alongside business strategy, the shift was significant. Turnover dropped, engagement scores climbed, and the leaders who had been skeptical started calling HR before making decisions instead of after. That is the transformation I am talking about. And it does not happen because you hire a new CHRO and hope for the best. It happens because leadership commits to treating culture as a strategic asset, measuring it, investing in it, and holding themselves accountable for it. That is high-value leadership trademark in action. This is exactly where Shea Blackmon Consulting meets the moment. Because I have lived this work from both sides. I have been the in-house HRBP navigating corporate politics while trying to move the needle. And I have been the outside consultant brought in because someone finally admitted the house was on fire. The CBC model is built for growing companies, especially those in transition. Private equity-backed organizations, growth stage companies, businesses going through mergers, restructurings, leadership changes. These are the inflection points where culture either accelerates growth or quietly sabotages it. Our approach is fractional and strategic. That means you get a senior level HR partner without the overhead of a full-time executive hire. And more importantly, you get someone who is not just running your compliance playbook. You get someone who is diagnosing your culture, aligning your people strategy with your business objectives, and building the internal capability so that when the engagement ends, you are not dependent on an external consultant to maintain what was built. Because sustainable transformation is the goal. I do not believe in creating dependency. I believe in building organizational muscles that allow your people leaders to continue the work long after the consulting engagement is complete. High-value leadership is not a one-time intervention. It is a framework for ongoing evolution. And for those of you who want to go deeper, the High-Value Leadership Intensive course is coming. This is a structured, hands-on learning experience designed for leaders who are ready to stop talking about culture change and start executing it. The waitlist is open now, and I would love for you to be part of it. The link is in the show notes. All right, you know I do not let you leave an episode without something you can use right now. So here is a quick exercise I call the 5-minute HR Strategic Audit. Grab a piece of paper or open your notes app. I want you to answer 5 questions honestly. Do not overthink it. Your gut reaction is usually the most accurate. Question 1. Does your HR leader or team know the company's top 3 business priorities for this year? Not the HR priorities, the business priorities. Question 2. In the last quarter, was HR consulted before a major business decision or after? Question 3. Can your HR team articulate the financial impact of turnover in your highest risk roles? Question 4. When was the last time a culture initiative in your organization was measured for business outcomes, not just participation numbers? Question 5. If you remove the word compliance from your HR department's description, would there be anything left that directly ties to competitive advantage? Now look at your answers. If you said no or I'm not sure to 3 or more of those questions, your HR function is operating below its strategic potential. And that is not an insult. That is an opportunity. This is exactly the kind of diagnostic lens that the High Value Leadership Framework provides. It moves you from guessing to knowing, from reacting to anticipating, and from surviving to thriving. And yes, there is a reason that is our tagline: unlock, empower, transform. Before I close out, I want to connect this to something personal. Because strategic HR is not just an organizational concept, it is a personal resilience strategy, especially for the professional women listening who are carrying the weight of transforming cultures while simultaneously navigating their own corporate challenges. That is why I created the SHIELD Resilience Strategy Guide. The SHIELD framework, which stands for self-awareness, healthy coping, internal resources, external support, learning orientation, and daily practices, is designed to help you build the strategic resilience you need while doing this work. The guide includes practical tools like the trigger log for building self-awareness, the strategic pause technique for handling challenging moments, and the after-action review process for extracting wisdom from every setback. Because you cannot pour into organizational transformation if your own cup is empty. And this guide is a free resource that I want you to have. Download the SHIELD Resilience Strategy Guide using the link in the show notes. And while you are there, if high value leadership resonated with what we discussed today, pick up a copy of the book. It goes deeper into every pillar, every framework, and every strategy we touched on. The link to grab your copy from my bookshelf is in the show notes as well. That is episode 68 of Unlock, Empower, Transform. I appreciate every single one of you who showed up today. If this episode hit home, do me a favor. Drop a comment below and tell me, is HR a strategic partner in your organization, or is it still stuck in the compliance corner? I want to hear your real experiences. Share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, a colleague, a leader, someone in HR who is fighting to be seen as more than a policy enforcer. This conversation needs to spread. On Thursday, we are diving into the retention ROI, calculating the true cost of turnover. Because once you reposition HR strategically, the next step is proving the financial case. And I am going to give you the numbers to do exactly that. Until then, stay purposeful, stay bold, and keep building cultures worth staying for. This is Shay Blackmon, Unlock, Empower, Transform.